I'm just being
That's not me.
Is it not you? I was guessing. Okay, well then I don't know whose it is.
What is that really good thing?
Would anyone like to tell me who's Rico?
My score.
Who's Rico? Nobody claims this Rico?
That's so cool.
Okay.
It might have been.
No, it's an upper level. It's almost maybe it's Ivy. Doesn't look like
Oh, I
Ivy.
got it wrong. Oh,
Could be
no.
Ivy. I'll look and see.
It might be mine.
Did you draw that?
I'm not.
You did not draw
That,
it.
that doesn't quite look. Don't you have that
Yay,
already over
good
there?
boy. Nope, I'm not that bad at spelling.
Yeah, that's not your hand.
There's that. All right.
That was really harsh.
It might be cons, okay, everyone?
I actually has hers.
I
with her
have
name on it.
Beautiful
has it.
handwriting, by the way.
Okay. Let's share a
Mine
screen.
makes me high.
And mine just looks like he died.
Okay.
What is anyone saying? to
And
me?
yours like
I don't know.
almost cursive.
Did you take cold medicine or you just like this? All right, so let's have a look at our notes and let's see what we can get.
Siri, what is
See if we can learn.
Kijos in Spanish?
With one
I'm
N.
so dumb. What is?
It's boy.
What is? Oh, okay.
Cole should know. What is nephew?
Nephew Sabrina.
Espanol.
What is nephew in Espanol?
It's part of the A. And
Is it? Oh,
Sabrina.
you big smart. Thank you.
you're taking notes.
So, oh, but don't,
No, I don't. I'm not.
but don't tell me. You didn't,
Vocabulary is hard to
officially,
remember. I can do conjugations.
you didn't officially tell me that.
Vocabulary.
You are doing imperfect and rhetoric. That is hard.
Rhetoric is
Easy.
hard.
I don't know what you just said, Cole, but I don't like it.
Rhetoric.
Like,
Right over the
Conjugating's easy with the easy stuff, and then it gets weird. But you guys,
That's what she said. That's what she said.
my voice is like, oh, it's Karen.
you guys haven't done the any irregulars yet. Not every verb. Every verb follows those
I'm
rules.
sorry that we're not as smart as you.
Almost. Is it
All right, are we ready? We're still yakety yakking. Are we good to go?
Folks, I have to say meat under my breath.
You all listening?
I'm listening.
Hello. Okay, all right, here we
He
go.
stole mine and he was like,
Did anybody, guys, did anybody happen to read what this bit about the airplanes? This is from last week when we talked about
I
lift.
didn't bring that book.
It gives you all the information about thrust, yaw, all that kind of business. Pitch, yaw and pitch and drag. Yeah, like an airplane has pitch and it has yaw and it has roll and it has yaw is this,
I like jaw rules. Yeah.
right? Yaw is this, pitch is this, roll is this.
Yeah.
So they have
Does anyone
to
know what you have to do to the wings of the plane to get to roll?
get it to roll.
Yeah. what
No,
you
go
have to do
ahead.
with the back fronts.
Is it?
You have to put them in opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then yaw, you can't really do with the plane. You have to use the drum.
Foot pedal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that is it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not. It's still not like a drum. Okay.
Right. If you ever want to learn how to fly or learn about flying, you should talk to my father-in-law because he was a fighter pilot, so he can tell you all the
Docking,
things.
like, twice a
Does he
year
know how to
and stuff.
fly a plane?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, like a
That's
fighter
so
jet.
Fighter jets and
He actually was Top Gun.
That's really
He went-
awesome.
The Top Gun's a real thing. They take a very selective few Navy pilots that they. I don't know. Henry, sit down. Just put it down. They take a very selective few Navy pilots that they think are the most promising, and then they take them to special school where they learn extra fancy stuff. I guess I don't know, but
Well, he was an aircraft carrier. and stuff.
yeah, he did. But not everybody that's on aircraft carrier has gone through Top Gun program.
No, I know. I
So,
know.
yeah.
That's a scary thought. Landing a plane.
Well, he's talked about cables not working correctly,
Oh yeah.
all that kind of business, which is pretty crap fascinating.
No.
Do you guys know when they land a plane on an aircraft carrier that guys? You know when they land a plane on an aircraft carrier that the second their wheels touch, they actually throttle, like they accelerate, they try to move as quickly as they can, because if the cable doesn't catch them and they're slowing down, so they land as if they're going to keep going, and a cable snags the plane. But the practice exercise for that is called touch and go. And growing up in Virginia Beach, where we had major naval air stations, touch and goes were a thing you could go watch. You could actually go, there was a place where you could see the runway off this one little road, and it was crazy because these jets, you could watch them fly in a circle and they would come back and they literally touch down on the runway and then lift right off and they keep going. And it's fun to watch, but it's noisy when they do that because they do it all day long. everybody in
Beach is
Virginia
loud.
Beach that's a local to Virginia Beach, like a lot of them have bumper stickers that say "I heart jet noise," because people that move there are like, "Oh, this jet noise is so obnoxious. I moved to this resort city." No, you moved to a Navy city. That's what it is. We love jet noise. It's the sound of freedom. All right, so buoyant force. So today, oh gosh,
Oh,
why don't you go let's get you something. It's always fun. Let me grab you a paper towel or something. Here's an
Wish test is yours.
It's right there. All right, and I'll get some. Let me get something for the table.
Oh my god, I lost one.
It happens.
No, that wasn't
What?
the one. It was
I
from
know,
like
right?
3 weeks
I've never
ago.
seen Batman like
which one?
the bloody.
I don't even know.
No,
I
you should
finished
have
it.
seen on Ian. It was cold outside. Ian bumped his nose. I swear that man looked like he was about to die of blood and water. All over his face, he looked like the Joker. It was like.
Wait, did I see a picture of that on your Instagram?
Oh, that's always fun.
You're-
You want to go
Yeah.
bathroom and go deal?
Wait, what did you get?
Here, you want to take some extras with you? Let me grab you a cold. Here, there you go.
Why?
Ah, get it.
I
Get one or two. Man, these
Oh
guys
no.
are all right.
Yes, we do that.
I'll get it.
I'm here. I'm sitting here next to him.
No.
I go.
There you go.
There's two holes.
All right, so yes,
Well, that's I guess.
it stinks when that happens. It really does. I've been there. Why do noses bleed so much? Does anyone know?
I've never had it bloody that bad.
I
have one. I
vessels
literally
around
got
my nose.
something on my nose.
I don't know.
We
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
it,
yeah.
but my nose was like blood.
My nose never bleed that bad since I accidentally
You have
ripped my nose ring
In
out.
Ireland.
Ooh, ow, that would bleed a lot, I'm sure.
Somebody actually
You just
bought
started
that.
going.
Yeah. So,
What happened?
so your nose has a lot of capillaries in it, right?
Yeah.
So if it gets dry and they burst, that's what it does.
Oh, they keep your nose wet.
Well, you keep it humidified, yeah. That's how I humidify.
Dude, I wanna
for you.
come.
Wash your hands. Shannon,
Well,
you
you're
wash your
done
hands,
Humidify.
Stop. You have.
Hey, Colby, can you get me his back? Can you get me one?
I'm
honey.
trapped. You have to ask Aaron.
Aaron,
What did I do?
go get a Coke. The Cokes are in the fridge.
How many?
Alright.
You can get one if you want.
Here, yeah, I already gave it.
Oh, okay. You get me one. And get Tyler.
Hurry, go fast. I'm dying.
I was right there.
No, I don't.
I saw it.
No, you did.
Alright, we're good now. Thank you. That was fun.
God, just give me one.
What?
You have a Coke. Why is that?
Henry, it's your mom.
I did years ago.
Let's see if you're on the
Oh,
table. What are
Hold,
you doing?
stop.
You were letting me
Oh.
put it in.
Years ago, I did an internship with a friend who was a physician assistant in an ER trauma center.
That's
And we
what
saw
they
some-
do.
Yeah, we saw some fun stuff, but he had this one patient come in who'd had a bloody nose for days, like days and days and days and days. And it just kept coming and wouldn't stop totally. Do you know what they do? This is fascinating. They put a tampon in it. Because it expands. They
Pause.
expand when they get wet. So
Makes
as it
sense.
expands, it puts pressure on everything. And it totally works. He sat there with a little string hanging out of his nose and fixed it. So there we go.
Who's the one that
You
moved
be
it?
lying around?
Hey, give me one.
Who was the guy who thought of that? That's the worst. part.
The same guy that thought, oh,
Put it in my-
where else do people bleed non-controllably?
When you
Why not
doubt.
put a stamp on the window? Bleeding.
You know
And
what?
sometimes there's special ones that are
Well, yeah.
infused with certain things that slow down bleeding, but still,
I don't like those.
it's
I'm bleeding
interesting.
out.
All right, so buoyancy is the ability, do everybody have their notes open? The ability of
I actually did
fluid
them this week.
good,
Not that I don't do
to,
them
ex-
every week.
to exert an upward force on an object placed in it. All right. So buoyancy results. Oh, yeah, listen.
Yeah.
Something.
He bled on me a little bit.
Oh, please wash well. Do you need more soap or?
Click it.
Buoyancy results. Cool. Buoyancy results in the apparent loss of weight of an object in fluid. Now it doesn't lose weight. It just appears. That's the word.
I got a hope.
Interesting.
Yep. It's all.
Rude.
Buoyant force is an upward force acting against which force? So buoyancy works upward. What force works downward?
Gravity.
Gravity, right. So buoyancy acts against gravity.
Yes.
Okay, so then we have this dude Archimedes, all right?
It's actually pronounced Apixlonon if you look closely.
Aha. Archimedes.
I don't get it.
That's IPA pronunciation, and that's actually something very interesting to learn if you're into linguistics at all. So Archimedes his principle says that the buoyant force of an object is equal to the weight of the fluid
I messed up the question.
displaced by the object. Archimedes'
Yeah.
principle. Okay.
The question, we thought I was really smart. It said how much can the can hold? Minus the weight of the
Minus the weight of the can. Okay. All right. Well, we'll worry about it later. I'm not worried about it this very minute. I love you got up and went to go check. You're like, oh, wait a minute. All right. Where was Archimedes from?
Greek.
Greece. Okay.
He's from Greek.
Now, he's a mathematician, physicist, engineer, inventor, and astronomer. What do we call somebody who is practiced in a lot of disciplines? Poly something.
Polyganic.
Oh, polygraph, not polygraph.
Not polygraph.
Poly.
You got the poly right.
No, I literally know this because I have to.
Poly. It's in Hamilton.
Polyglot is linked.
It's in a Hamilton lyric.
Oh, I know.
Oh, polymath.
Yay! Polymath. Okay.
I literally had a test on that. I know what it
You
is.
did.
I'm just so dumb.
Nah.
Cole, why were you stuffing your mouth? Keep this muted yet.
Polymath.
So that like.
So Archimedes, guys, Archimedes is definitely a polymath, although it seems that most of his disciplines are kind of in the same vein, right? They're all math and science. It's not like he's also a poet, but still.
All
right.
One of them was. Like one of the
Hamilton.
polymaths was also a poet.
Well, a lot of them were.
Hamilton did poetry, right?
Well, a lot of them did. What always fascinates me is like Jefferson had such a wide range. Like he had a really wide range of disciplines. He went from he was a violinist and that extraordinarily eloquent writing to, you know, he made ciphers for decoding. And when they were doing construction at UVA a couple years ago, and they took down a wall and found a chemistry lab he'd constructed.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. You should look it up. It's wild.
How is it just hiding there?
Because they had built a wall up at
Chemistry
some
lab.
point. Yeah, it was a little brick room with he had like a little oven and all this other business in there where he
How
was
do you
just
just like look at the floor plan? Hi, what's this little square of nothing doing there?
How
Yeah,
much Jefferson?
behind a wall, like in a little
How
corridor.
dare
Crazy
you
racist.
not-
Crazy smart.
Yeah. Yep. So Archimedes' principle, we're talking about this. Now we're getting to this idea of this dude Archimedes, who's important and has a very fun story, although it's probably not true. So he's considered the greatest mathematician of antiquity. So antiquity would be pre-Middle Ages. Cole, zip it. And he anticipated modern calculus and analysis by applying concepts of infinitesimals and the method of exhaustion to derive and rigorously prove a range of geometrical theorems, including the area of a circle and the surface area volume of a sphere and the area under a parabola. So basically lots of mathy stuff. He was a mathy guy.
Aren't we all?
So he had other mathematical achievements. So he accurately gave an accurate approximation of pi. What's the approximation of pi that we typically use? Yeah, 3.14, right. Whole stop. All right. So yes, so he accurately derived pi. He defined and investigated spirals. I mean, he did all kinds of stuff, right? But here's the fun part when it comes to science. So there's this widely known anecdote about him that is likely not true, but it's wholly entertaining. And it's the story of him discovering, quote unquote, discovering the idea of volume. Okay, so it goes like this. You probably read it, but I'm gonna read it to you again because it's fun. So the most widely known anecdote about Archimedes tells of how he invented a method for determining the volume of an object with an irregular shape. According to Vitruvius, a votive crown for a temple had been made for King Hiero II of Syracuse, who had supplied pure gold to be used. And Archimedes was asked to determine whether some silver had been substituted by the dishonest goldsmith. So this king gives his goldsmith a whole big block of gold and goes, make this into a crown. And the goldsmith gives it back. And the king's like, I wonder if this is really all the gold I gave him, or did he substitute some? So
And keep some gold for himself.
Archimedes had to solve the problem without damaging the crown. So he could not melt it down into a regularly shaped body in order to calculate its density. If it was a cube, it would have been super easy, right? Super easy.
Crowns aren't cute.
All right. So while taking a bath, he noticed that the level of water in the tub rose as he got in and realized that this effect could be used to determine the volume of the crown. So all of this is probably true or could be true. For practical purposes, water is incompressible, so the submerged crown would displace an amount of water equal to its own volume. by dividing the mass of the crown by the volume of the water it displaced, the density of the crown could be obtained. The density would be lower than that of gold if cheaper, less dense metals had been added. And then Archimedes, this is the idea, this is the legend, took to the streets stark naked, screaming and running through the town because he was so excited, and he was so excited he forgot to dress, and he yelled what?
Eureka.
Eureka, eureka, which
I
means,
believe that happened.
yep, which means I found it.
That is
So,
a super white guy
When people
thing to do.
say eureka,
Oh,
you can picture this naked Greek guy running through town dripping wet because
I'd rather not.
Thank you, Miss Danny. I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
was gonna say, I'd rather not picture that.
yeah, that's entertaining, isn't it?
I was being sarcastic because I
So-
really didn't want to know.
The test was conducted successfully, and it proved that silver had been mixed in.
Wow.
So I don't know. It never says here what happened to the goldsmith.
Probably got
They kill him.
executed.
They kill him.
The story of the Golden Crown does not appear in the known works of Archimedes. Moreover, the practicality of the method it describes has been called into question due to extreme accuracy with which one would have to measure the water displacement. Archimedes may have instead sought a solution that applied a principle known as hydrostatics, as Archimedes' principle when he described in his treatise on floating bodies. So it says, the principle states that a body immersed in fluid experiences a buoyant force equal to the weight of the fluid it displaces. So using the principle, it would have been possible to compare the density of a crown of pure gold, yeah, probably, by balancing the crown on a scale with pure gold, okay? And then immersing the apparatus in water. The difference in density between the two samples would cause the scale to tip accordingly.
Wow.
So if you had a scale and you put the crown on one side and then you balanced it with gold on the other side so that the weight was equal, and then you put it in the water and it went one way or the other, that would tell you that the density is different, right? That's the idea. And that probably is more how he did it. But the idea of him running naked through the streets is just so entertaining. Streets. I'm saying that like I'm a rapper. All right. So, density and buoyancy. So this has to do a lot with your lab. If an object is less dense than the fluid it's in, it'll float. And if it's more dense than the fluid it is in, it will sink. So if you take a cork of the same size and toss it in a bowl of water, it's going to float. If you take a pebble of the same size, it's going to sink, right? When buoyant force is equal to the weight, an object floats or is suspended. And when the buoyant force is less than the weight, the object sinks. So if you look, you got a great graphic there. You got something that sinks, something that's suspended, and something that floats. You also have the handy dandy little triangle. I highly recommend you memorize at least the center section of the triangle. If you do that, the rest of it will make sense to you, and you'll get a question right on your test. Oh,
Yes.
Did I say that out loud? I did. So, this is the part that you need to memorize. Once you memorize the center, the rest of it is totally just falls into place. So, what's at the top? Somebody look and tell me what's at the top. M. Yeah, mass. Okay, and then these are D, and V. And then you've got mathematical symbols here, here, and here.
Divide,
Plus,
divide.
plus, divide.
Let's
It's
divide,
divide,
divide, and multiply. Right? All right, so looking at this, the rest of the triangle just falls into place. So if you look here, which two letters are facing this triangle?
Divided by
So,
D
which
equals
one's
to-
missing?
V.
The V is missing, so the V is gonna go here.
So
Which
D-
one's on top?
M
So it's M divided by D or M over D, right? Same thing. Got it? Look at on this side, which one's missing?
G.
The D. Density is missing, right? And then look, the mass is still on top. Just keep it in this order, just the way it is. So you get mass divided by volume or mass divided by volume, same thing, right? Bottom one, which one's missing?
M.
M's
O,
missing.
D.
And then, so that's gonna equal
G
D times V, or technically, it's the same thing, right?
Where's
because
D go? That was two,
Multiplication
right?
doesn't matter, but it matters with the division, so be
No.
sure that you keep
Associate.
this on top. Yep, keep this on top and you're good. If you memorize the center section,
Good.
you've got it, because everything else just fills in, right? MDV, MDV.
D and V.
Slow.
Left to right.
Yes,
is D.
DMV.
I
Like
hate the
there you go.
DMV.
And if you
Left
just
to right is
remember that
DMV.
the only multiplications at the bottom, whatever works for you. I'm like, those are my initials before I got married.
Right.
So there you go.
Come on,
You know what?
Dad.
Danny.
Come on, Dad.
Whatever.
Yep.
Dad
There
doesn't
you
have to
go.
go around.
Whatever,
What was
whatever.
your name before?
Danielle.
My maiden
always
name's
was.
Valines.
Oh my.
Valines.
started with a V, but I
Yeah.
Valines.
No, okay.
I
You know
like
my
Valines.
dad's middle
That's everybody
name
does
is
it.
Albert.
Albert.
Yeah, it's
My
Albert.
dad's.
I always forget that.
I can't laugh about that because I already
Everett?
was rude to him today. Accidentally.
My dad.
Yeah, she did.
My dad.
Yes, I thought he was you, and I was like, "You suck, Cole."
No.
It was your
Through the
dad, and I was like, "Oh
He
my
didn't-
god."
He didn't
I'm
hear you
so
though. He's
sorry.
like, "What'd you say?"
I know, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's even worse." I brought it up.
Oh, believe me, he has a sense of humor. Oh yeah. All right. So looking at the bottom of that page, all right, you have at the bottom of your page here
Come on, Kai.
a solid block of steel sinks in water.
You're such a jerk. Well, obviously.
A steel ship with the same mass floats on the surface. So the boat is not less dense than the water, and it does not weigh less than the water. So why does it float?
It displaces the shape of the hull. Displaces
Yes.
The same amount of water.
An equal volume. Okay, so I'm gonna draw that for you. Hopefully that'll help. So that's what you have to remember is displacement when it comes to something like that. So say you've got, so let's take our friend's little boat that he keeps at his grandma's. What does Nathan call his boat?
Oh, the
Yes.
yes,
He
yes,
calls
that's
it
POS.
the
I know
SSPOS.
that. Yes.
Hopefully everyone knows what POS stands for and I don't have to say it. Okay, it is POS. It's this little,
I have a
No.
picture. I have a
I
picture.
don't.
You don't know what it is. It's my dad's favorite saying.
piece of something. There you go.
Oh,
Okay, there you go.
Think so. Be calm.
Okay.
I have both of these just whispered
Both was
in my ear.
fabulous. So anyway, you have a picture of it, Cole?
I think so.
Okay, so it is like a little tiny, like a little
His
robot.
dude- I think his
They
uncle or his
named it that.
grandfather found it and then gave it to him. Like he just found it washed ashore.
Yeah, like it washed up somewhere. It's somebody's trash boat, but he loves it and it's his thing. It's his boat. So basically, if this is the boat, we're gonna do a cross section of the boat. All right, we're gonna imagine that we're looking at a little cross section of the boat. All right. There it is. Hello.
My arms are too short. My hands are
So
too
if this is a cross section of the boat
Under your jacket.
and it's sitting in the water, are you all listening? Or are you talking?
Yep.
Oh,
Someone's talking to me, but I'm not listening to
I
them.
know. So look, you got the water here, and ooh, I'm sorry. Are you okay?
Yeah.
You better? All right, good. I was gonna go check on you in a second. I get to elbow you. You got me now. All right. So if the boat's sitting in the water like this, what's in the boat?
Air.
Bricks.
Air.
Or a
Air's in the boat,
person.
or a person, or air and a person. Oh wait, Cole.
Yes.
I'm gonna put Nathan in the boat.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Something's happening.
Is Nathan ugly?
No.
Oh no.
That's a good question. Is
Hold on.
Nathan-
Hold on. Wait.
No,
Nathan hasn't worn a shirt to gymnastics in years. He's like, "Whoa." Okay, he's a gymnast. I mean, and he looks like a gymnast. So
He
anyway,
also looks like
this
he
is
has
Nathan and Nathan's
conversation
boat. Let's tell him that we made an example of him
I
today.
really,
How
I
old
really
is
hope you
Nathan?
don't.
Nathan is 16. Anyway.
Is it
Okay,
true?
in the boat, huh?
Is
He
it
can
true?
levitate. Yes. Okay, so Nathan is levitating in his boat. What's in the boat with Nathan? We said.
Bricks.
Oh no,
Air.
no, generally folding chairs.
Me.
Something to
Yes,
sit
he
on.
does put folding chairs in the boat. So we're gonna pretend that it's
Who am I
just
being the boat?
the air. There you go. She wants to be the boat. Okay, so here's your air in the boat and Nathan. So this boat is displacing a volume of water equal to the inside of the
Oh, there it
boat,
is.
but it's equal
That's
to
his little
what?
brother. That's not him. That's
Hold
his
on.
brother.
Cool.
Find a picture of him, please.
It's equal to. Is it equal to the entire boat, or is it equal to the portion of the boat that is submerged?
I have a picture of the boat.
Think about it. Oh, hang on. What's being displaced? The whole boat or the part of the boat equal?
What do you mean by displaced? What?
Okay, so
What
how
is that?
much water is the boat displacing?
Oh,
Enough to fill this
water.
entire boat
No,
or enough to fill up to there?
enough to fill up to there.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so this boat is displacing this much water, all right? We got it. Now, if you put a little water in the boat, it's gonna come down lower. right? Lower and lower and lower. So what happens if you take the boat, as Nathan does, and I love to watch him do this because it's entertaining. He turns the boat sideways like a scoop, all right?
Yeah, you have to do that.
And when he turns it sideways like a big scoop,
It fills with water.
he fills it with water,
No, the best thing to do with a canoe.
and the
But
whole boat.
he just sinks it for fun. It's not
Yeah, he
fun.
sinks it so no one sees it or whatever.
No, just for fun.
So now the whole boat's
I
underwater.
got to do it one time with him. It was
Yeah,
fun.
it's really fun.
So
I just
when
sat
you're,
there.
so here's the question. You listening? So if he wants to raise this boat, how much water does he have to take out of it?
All of the water.
All of the water. He can have a
Wait,
little bit,
no. He can have. I don't know.
a tiny bit, but he needs to take out enough water that when he displaces it, the majority of the boat is above the surface. Right now, some submarines, for example, what do submarines?
They
How
actually
they work?
they pump in and out water.
They pump water and air in and out. They have these ballast things on the side, right? And they pump air and water in and out, and that helps them go up and down.
Yes.
Fish do the same thing. Fish have air bladders in their body that keep them level.
That's actually really lit.
Yeah. And I had a fish once that he had an air bladder problem, and it was only on one side.
He
So
exploded.
how do you suppose the fish looked?
He exploded.
Yep, like that. And he was like, I looked at him one day and I'm like, oh, you lost an air bladder. You're dying because you are now permanently sideways. Like the side with no air bladder went down and the side with the air bladder went up. And he was like, that's gonna be it for that fish.
My fish
Damn.
killed itself.
You know, I had a friend who did that when she was in college. She had a window that opened up to their front quad. And it was a pretty day. She cleaned her little fish tank and she put it on the window because she was dusting the table, and he went and jumped out of the bowl and landed on the quad and died. Now Drew's did that too. He jumped out of his cup.
No, Drew killed his fish.
No, he didn't. That was the first one. The second one, he had put him in the little solo cup because he washed out the tank, and then he was pouring the water, and he jumped out
No.
of.
That was the first time that he put warm water in
He
there.
thought
'cause
it was
he would
cold.
like it.
He was little. It was cold out. He was trying to warm the fish up. He didn't know.
Okay, well then he put the fish into shock.
Just boiled it.
He didn't.
boiled
He
it.
boiled the fish.
The fish went into shock and died.
My fish was like
He boiled the fish.
Some
No,
of our
no,
friends
no.
gave it to us
It
because they
wasn't that
thought
hot. It
that
was warm water. so it
somebody
just
was
cold
sad,
water,
so they
and
gave us
got
a fish because fish are supposed to make you happier. And then our,
Okay.
I guess, depression fish died,
shocked.
and
The
it made me
depression fish
even
died.
sadder than I was
Makes you even
before.
sadder.
Really fucked
Yeah.
it up.
It's just making more sad because I always die within 3 days.
Here's that.
My bunny had a heart attack after the first day I got
So
it.
here's
Oh,
the
that's rough.
here's the submarine graphic. All right. So we were just talking about this. So here's a submarine and it's diving, and you'll see that it fills with water, right? They call this negative buoyancy because it's sinking. And there's your positive buoyancy, it's going up,
Such a nerd.
Whoa.
right? And this is when it wants to be in the middle, it finds itself level. Okay. Now, interesting, I'll tell you one interesting tidbit because this is fun, and it's about pressure. So they do pressurize, obviously, in a submarine, and newer submarines are obviously way better at this than old submarines, right? So my grandfather was a submarine captain in World War II. Huh?
Saw that one coming.
Yeah. So yeah. So he was a submarine captain in World War II, and which is hard because he was 6 foot tall, and they or six
Oh,
foot
that's
6 foot
awful.
1 or 2.
But
and
it
they-
wasn't like the ones
there's
in the
not a
movies where it's like
point
big,
that's
Yeah,
like
they-
bedrooms and quarters. It was
yeah.
like the 2-person subs.
No, his was bigger than
I
that.
think it was a 2-person.
No. He had a crew.
There's still.
But it wasn't-
A 5-person is the size of my kitchen.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
it was bigger than that, but it wasn't one of the gigantic, like the big nuclear ones we have now.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Smaller than that.
anyway, he was making bread one day, I think for fun, like he was helping
In
out
the
the cook.
submarine?
Yeah, and they kneaded the bread and they put it in the pans and they put it out on the counter, and they were under this whole time. They put it in the pans and they were waiting for it to rise, and it didn't rise, and then they surfaced and they went in there and it was like boom everywhere because all that pressure and the little tiny air bubbles inside the bread lessened really quickly, and the bread just like blew up all over the place.
Can we try doing this?
Oh, that would be fun. You'd have to
Yeah.
get the submarine help.
Do you have a submarine on hand?
I don't happen to
Just
have
put a
one.
bowl underwater. It's the same
That's
thing.
not how that.
No.
No,
Yeah.
you put a small bowl of
Mhm,
like,
yeah.
and then put it in a Tupperware and then put it underwater.
Yeah, you could do that in a swimming pool.
You know, I'm gonna
Yeah,
do
but
it.
he was probably like 100, 200 feet underwater.
Literally,
I
I'm
don't
just
know
gonna
how
do it
far
because
under.
you're wrong.
Dude,
You're
I-
being rude.
Do you have 100 foot?
I did, however, last week, if you remember,
Make you fun of my grammar.
we had a balloon. Do you remember the balloon?
Oh.
It's still,
Did anybody-
it still is in the
I know.
freezer.
Did anybody write down the measurement around the outside of it?
No.
I didn't.
I didn't write it down, but I marked it, but I didn't write it down. Does anybody remember what it looked like roughly?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like double.
That was
Dude,
Let me
wrong.
grab
in the
it.
freezer.
I'm literally gonna make a swimming pool.
I'm
And
gonna make it swimming.
You're
I'm
gonna,
just
guys,
saying-
you're gonna make this one.
She's gonna make.
you know what, Cole? I'm gonna vlog the whole thing, and I'm gonna cut it
So
down to
this is
4.20
our balloon
minutes.
after being in the
Smaller.
freezer.
Like I said.
Much smaller than it started, right?
That's a problem.
Can I hold
Is
it?
it cool?
It's much smaller. It doesn't feel cold,
Oh.
but the stem does. The stem feels cold.
Can I see?
But it'll probably warm up fairly quickly.
Yeah, put the pencils away. Says.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So what we did last week, Shannon, was we just blew it up, not huge. And we marked it and then we measured it, but we were just doing it for fun. So we didn't write it down. And then we put it in the freezer to see how much smaller it would get. But we don't know how much smaller because we forgot to write it down.
Oh gosh.
Just goofing. All right, so
Pop it, Henry.
why don't I do this? Let me go. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna grab your questions and I'm gonna give them back so you all can check your own questions. All right,
Wait.
and then that'll be done.
I'll check your
That's
check mine.
That's like not
I'm
a
not checking anything.
like
Like, I was like,
died.
what?
I
We can each other. So let's check each other. We'll give each other. Each other's things.
Also, I didn't turn in my like
That's
weekly
fine.
questions because I figured that we would
Whoa.
like.
That's fine if you've got it with you.
Ice cream cold.
Good teacher, son.
Yeah.
Can't be behind.
Right here. You kick it over here.
Yeah.
Flowers
I know.
behind.
Dylan, Michael, where are everybody else's?
What
Did
am I
everybody else
writing?
have them with you, or
Right
did you
here,
turn in
correct.
somewhere?
Wait.
Yours, your weekly questions.
Oh, I
You
know.
have
Yeah,
them?
just like this. It's doing this.
Oh, hang on to it. Don't turn it in. We're gonna look at it. Do you have yours, Dylan? Henry, do you have yours?
Lesson 13.
You're being
14.
rude.
This is, it says 13 on top. It says a typo.
No,
No, it's 13. I'm sorry. This is 13, not 14. I had to think about what week I'm in.
Last
Yeah.
week's lab. Said.
Can I trust
Yeah.
you? Or like,
Yeah.
can I trust you?
No.
Well, you,
Well, you
were
can
the
never
one that said this year was 2018 to
He's like
19.
holding my wrist. This is really.
Will you not poke you? Will you not poke
I'm obviously gonna poke you. I'm being really obvious. I'm gonna poke you.
Danny, what
All
are your
right.
thoughts on
I'm gonna poke you because
What?
when I watch
What are
you.
your thoughts on bullying?
I don't think it's any of my business. All right, that's you.
See,
Do you want to grade Ivy's too, or do you want me to grade Ivy's while I'm sitting here?
I would like you to grade it because if I grade it, she's gonna be like, "Kai, are you sure I got that right?" And I'm gonna be like, "I don't
I'm
know."
using blue because my red isn't with me. All right, so
Yo, we have twin pens. Sick.
Dude, that's such a good
I don't even know whose pen this is. Somebody left it here.
It's just yours.
All right, so against what force does buoyancy act?
Gravity.
Gravity. Yep.
Grading myself.
All right. In order for an object to float, it must be either less dense than the fluid is in, or it must what?
Way less than the water.
No, it's not about
It's
weight.
the amount of density. It's a surface.
Displace the volume of water equal
Oh,
to
I'm
its
on the
volume.
wrong one.
Right.
Bummer.
Displace the same amount of water in which it is submerged.
Okay.
This is lesson 13.
Then I'm gonna say I get that wrong.
Nope,
I got it right. I know.
right.
Give me a check mark. Gosh, I hate that.
The Titanic movie
Correct that.
is the worst movie
That
that's
movie-
ever
Loki-
been
Loki
made.
Jack and Flying.
The B movie was better than Titanic.
B movie is the
I
second
like
best movie
stuff, so
ever.
I'm gonna drop
You may be
What's
pretty
the
old.
first
best?
best?
The first
First
best movie is
Endgame.
obviously Endgame.
The first best
All right.
movie beyond.
It's
That's
good,
not a
but
movie.
it's not the best movie.
Okay, so it has to displace the same amount of water in which it is submerged. That is the graphic on your notes that shows the ships, right? You're gonna want to make sure that you understand that and can word that for your test this week. All right, lastly, the Mythbusters one. Did everybody watch? Did anybody not watch?
I watched
I've
it.
seen it.
I
Everybody watch.
I didn't
Chris
watch,
Paul.
but I wrote the.
I've seen it.
You've seen it before? Okay. So, Mythbusters
I love them.
What's the answers? It's the
Jamie
Titanic
and-
question. It's the constant meme that that Jack
Adam.
could have survived if he'd just gotten on the door.
They,
My
he
God.
could've if they had
This actual
MacGyvered the
bus
jacket.
market.
Yeah, taking the jacket and
Okay.
stick it under.
Just
Remove
spread
it.
the
Could've
buoyancy.
if they had MacGyvered the life jackets. Yes.
So basically, they were stupid
Rose
and died.
sucks. Okay, she threw the freaking diamond off the boat for no reason.
Loki's
Like,
stupid, am I right?
she is low key.
She should have kept that and given it to Jack so he
She
could
did
start
like
a new
that.
life.
Don't
Spoil
but,
the
you know.
movie. I haven't seen it.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
big.
yeah.
The Titanic.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
planning on seeing it this week. Like, so like,
And it's like really.
I don't know. She is fine. It's like she didn't like her husband. She was like,
Dylan,
I mean,
good
don't-
job.
So the answer is yes. She would have survived
Oh yeah.
if they put a life vest under the door. Right? He would have survived. Sorry, he could have gotten on there with her. Because for years, people have shown. Where's the meme? There's the meme with the door and the. You seen the little outline? Have you seen that? Hang on.
Hang on, I gotta see some cool memes.
Yeah, these right here. Like this is the. I love this one. These people did it. You're not gonna eject.
Adam.
So like these people here.
What? Are you all right?
So apparently James Cameron discussed it, but
No, I
if you look here, these people have taken it upon themselves to position themselves
Stop it.
in every possible way, showing that they could both fit. Look at this one. Look how spread out they are. I love that.
Playing cards.
They're like all spread out.
oh,
Yeah, they're
okay.
playing cards. They're
I've
just
seen
sitting.
it.
They're holding each other. They got their legs all, one's in between,
Look
one's
at
the other
her.
way.
She's like completely lying down. She looks all comfortable.
Yeah, and he's like floating in the water here. So this is reenacting this, right? And then these are all the possible positions.
No shade at all. But Leonardo DiCaprio sucked in that movie. He was better than Romeo and Juliet. and he's
You
better
like that
than-
Romeo and Juliet? I don't know how I feel about that one.
No.
Henry, you have literally the worst taste.
I don't know how I feel about the Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet's good.
And there's this one.
That is the first thing that we
Jerry
ever
Seinfeld's a
agreed
better
on.
actor than Leonardo
Yeah,
DiCaprio.
no.
Facts.
Changed my mind. Changed my
Facts.
mind. Wait, who?
Facts. How many?
There's
how
this
many-
one.
Better.
Let's be honest.
How many-
Shh, guys,
how many
stop,
times
stop,
did
stop. Let's be honest, there was room for two. Right? So, I mean, like,
No.
He was just, he was like, you know what, I'm just like, you know.
I don't want to ever see her again.
Yeah, he was just like, I'm gonna come and die.
apparently James Cameron did there's a whole article here. Shh, Michael Cole. There's a whole article here about where James Cameron is going to debunk it.
Oh, really?
You know, he's the director, right? And the synopsis says, not so. It's not a question of room, it's a question of buoyancy. Jack puts Rose on the raft, that he gets on the raft, he's not an idiot, he doesn't want to die, and then the raft sinks. So it's clear that there's really only enough buoyancy available for one person.
Well,
So he makes a decision to let her be that.
We're just gonna ignore the fact that it's really just White Star Line's fault because they didn't put
Well, why couldn't
the
we
lifeboats on the
Yeah,
ship.
there's
They
that.
knew it wasn't enough. and they're
Also,
like, well,
can
doesn't
we
look
just
good.
not ignore the fact that Rose could have just gotten on a freaking lifeboat instead of finding Jack, and Jack could have
You
sat
know.
on the freaking like
Thingamajigger, and then they could have used the diamond and they could have lived happily ever
Moral,
after.
moral of the story: love is the worst.
Thank you.
It's the
Love is
worst.
dead.
Right.
Love sucks.
All right, so what I'd like to do,
Live in
Love is
solitary.
great, except when you're dying.
So let's we can find it.
Don't.
I'm good.
Just don't anymore.
so what I'd like to do with our remaining time is real quick, let you
Game.
write any notes for tests, and then I wanted to let you watch the Mythbusters where they tried to raise a boat with ping pong balls.
That's fun.
That is really entertaining because it's pretty much what y'all did today, except
Did
with
you see it?
I don't
ping
Have
pong
you
balls.
seen the one where he tries to swim in the shade balls?
In what?
It's very.
He
just,
swims in the what?
Shade balls. So there's balls
No.
that they put on
He's
a
such a steered little boy.
dam reservoir in nowhere, but they use it so that the water doesn't get heated up, and it's black. It's like black, just like bowling ball size.
I don't know
You
that.
guys are so
No,
stupid.
now.
You guys are so
John
stupid.
Mullins.
Yeah, that's basically.
I'm a little boy. So I'm not gonna hurt you.
You're going crazy.
You seen that one?
Okay, I'm gonna stop the share here.
Bye.
Well, no, because the sharing screen, because I don't want you to see inside my grade book. Oh,
Cher's iconic.
She used auto-tune.
she is, except she started that.
Oh,
That's my
screw
problem
Cher,
with
never
Cher.
mind.
All right. So let's go over. So you may want to take some notes.
Poor Abe.
Y'all are so wound up today. I don't know what's up.
I'm sick.
I'm sick.
I know you are. I don't know what everybody else is. All right. So let's real quick. Test 13. Someone went ahead and did it ahead of time.
Me.
That's the one.
Oh, yeah, really? I thought it was me.
I thought it was me too.
I guess got whacked.
No,
I
you did
did
13.
15.
All right.
You did 15?
Yeah, I did them all one
There was
weekend.
some-
One, 'cause I-
Oh my gosh. How did I just do that? Let's
He-
see.
he
outsmarted the system, and the system was like, I'm gonna change real quick, and then he just
Cool.
did.
Yeah, I went ahead and did something.
Yeah, we should have probably done
It
that.
didn't. All right, let's see. All right, sorry, I lost it and I hit a button and it disappeared. So if you may want a piece of paper, or you may want to go through your notes and just circle the things. That's what I would recommend. Circling things in your notes just saves you writing. All right.
Just don't like circling.
So looking at just nothing makes you happy today. Huh?
I'm sorry.
I'm so sad. All right, moving on to this one. All righty, ready. Here we go. Buoyancy is the ability of a fluid to exert an upward force on an object placed in it. You're going to need to know true or false regarding that. Okay? Keep in mind your true or false regarding that. What is buoyancy? Know the definition and then you'll be good. Okay? So goofy. All right. You're going to do a matching, okay? And your matching is going to be about whether an object will float or sink or be suspended based upon its density, compared to the density of the fluid it's in, okay? So you're going to want to understand what causes it to sink versus float, right? All right. Then you're going to want to know, remember the little triangle I drew for you?
I love it.
You might just see that exact thing, but it might be missing some information, and you may have to fill it in.
Yay.
What are we missing? All the information.
No, I mean, it's definitely going to have some information, but you're going to have to know it. Guys, stop.
All
right. You're going to have to explain how a big ship floats with regard to displacement. So if you use the word weight and you're like, well, it has to weigh less than the water, you're not right,
You're done.
right? You have to discuss it
You're big done.
regarding displacement, which is exactly the wording in your notes. You're going to have to know the opposite force of buoyancy. That's the easy one, right?
What?
The opposite force of buoyancy.
Okay.
Then you're going to have to state Archimedes' principle, and you're going to read very carefully because there are 3 multiple choice answers, and they are worded all slightly differently. Let me give you all 3, and then you tell me which one is right. I'm not going to give them to you in the same order they are on the test, so it won't help you to write A, B, or C.
Darn it.
The buoyant force on an object is less than the weight of the fluid displaced by the object. The buoyant force of an object is equal to the weight of the fluid displaced by the object, or the buoyant force of an object must be greater than the weight of the fluid displaced by an object. Equal. That's the one you want. Okay,
You should.
so it's a quick test. This is a short one. There's like, what, 6 questions with a total of 24 points because one of them's matching. So this is not a hard one. It should be an easy one. And we knocked out the lab, most of you.
Yeah.
Did most of you finish your lab today?
Everyone did.
So really, there shouldn't be a ton to do. You should be moving on to your next,
I'm actually very excited about that.
about what, being done?
No, about finishing. Things.
About finishing things. I'm always excited about finishing things. So you will be moving on. It should be easy for you guys to move right to your next. What I do?
Is that recording me or is it looking
No,
at
it's
you?
it's looking at me.
Oh, okay.
I'll let you
Okay.
know if it's ever looking at you. I don't want it looking at you unless you know it's looking at you. All right. Anybody have any questions about this week or this week's lessons, lab, anything? Next week we go into 14, and this is work and power and machines.
How much power do you use to travel?
Exactly. Yes.
This is kind of like a future question,
Okay.
but I would like to blow something up. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And I
All right.
really want to do that in a safe way though, because my mom's gonna get mad at me if I do it any other way.
Okay,
What?
sure.
What were you planning?
Because you need power to
Mhm.
listen.
Well, so
Make a flower
there's
pot.
always chemistry. However, the easiest way I think to blow stuff up is just dry ice. It expands pretty
See,
rapidly.
She won't let me do that. I've tried.
Oh, I'll do it with you.
Really?
So yeah, I mean, if y'all want to do that, we can do it just for fun someday.
Yeah.
But
I really want to blow stuff up.
okay, I'll see if I can find some and you know, get it within a time frame that it's applicable to.
I have
me.
$11.06
Oh, I don't want
have
your
to go towards dry ice.
Excellent.
How much money you have?
All right, so Cole, will you do this for me? Will you go set up the TV and put on the? Can you find the MythBusters with the ping pong balls?
Is it on YouTube?
Beautiful.
I believe it is.
I could have.
I'm about 90% sure. I'll double check it here, but
Well, I'm not gonna.
But the hippie that knew Eric Butler.
yes,
Oh, and Therese, when you have those questions that say check all that apply.
yes.
It doesn't let you check all
You know, and that's the weird thing. It shows on my side that it will. So,
Like, I've just been putting the first one that I.
yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah, because it could have been liquid or gas. So
Yeah,
if you
Okay.
choose either of them,
I'll look over them and double check them because it's kind of careful.
no,
All right, yeah. You know, it's on my end. It looks like it'll go, but I can't activate.
My mom always like
Wait.
asks me right afterward, are there manually graded? Because you
No,
can get
my
them
mom
as a
literally
piece.
asked that exact same question because she almost murdered me the other day.
She
because
kind of
was
did
like-
because she called me. I'm like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
haven't looked at him yet.
I apologize for that. If you ever like called me and we haven't graded.
There was one that there was a lot of manually graded ones. that
Phil,
my mom
yes.
was like,
Fill time.
Oh yeah.
It's funny.
Dr. Phil.
Ooh, Dr. Phil.
I love Dr. Phil.
So Ivy or anybody else who's watching,
My mom.
we're gonna go watch this. It's this one here, the Sunken Sailboat Rescue. That's the one. So we're gonna go watch that.
Is that a live stream?
It is live, but it gets recorded. So, all
Sorry.
right, I'm gonna stop this video later. I didn't do one for the other group because I was way behind. All right, and end meeting. Okay. So y'all go get comfy over there and watch this because it's